Hi, my name is Clowntown. Thank you very much for being here. This is a quick tutorial on how to set up a fuel depot. If you like this sort of thing, hit that like and subscribe, and make sure you ring the bell so that you know when I submit a new video. Also, if you have a comment, you can leave it in the comment section below, or you can come by 5-6 days a week in my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Clowntown. You can ask it directly. Anyway, let's get to the instructions. So what I have so far is this is a little creative mode map. And on the supply side, which is the green, I've got a train station named Fuel Input. And this train is going to be our fuel train. Now it's going to be filled. I have some magic sources. I'm using the creative mod. I have some magic sources producing fuel in a standard way with a buffer chest that is stacker chests all around. Filling up a cargo wagon. Now this is a very common setup. You'll see this in a lot of videos on how to supply a train. But anyway, this loads a train very quickly, and what it's going to do is it's going to create a condition of we want it to always have full cargo. So that's going to be our input condition. And we colored it green for fuel input. Now, so I haven't built a real outpost, but we'll play like this is outpost 1. Say this is halfway across your map. To an iron outpost or something. And here's an iron outpost number 2. Say they're at opposite ends of the map way far out. What I've set up here is these inserters from inserters, this belt, and this little void here. All of this is just to demo the slow consumption of fuel. But what a fuel so this is not required. This is just done for the demo to demonstrate that the fuel will diminish over time, but it's a little sped up. What I've got is a green circuit, a green signal. You don't need any combinators, but 2 wires from chest to chest, assuming you're going to have logistic bots coming and getting the fuel and loading it into a train later on. But I have logistic chests, passive providers, and I've blocked them off to where they can hold 200 apiece. So again, rocket fuel stacks to 10, and so each row is 100. So this one can hold 200 in here. This middle one can also hold 200. Notice it's just a normal standard steel chest, and then another provider. And now I've summed this up for the signal so that it sums the total between the 2 chests and wired it to the station. Now the option that I've chosen is enable disable. And once it has a wire connected to it, it'll put up this little enable condition. Click on enable disable, and it pops down this little condition. So I said anytime that this total signal is less than 100, I want it to enable the station. Right? So that means if it's full, the station is going to disappear and be disabled, so the train can't get to it. That means it's only when it's empty, I want this to be visible. So I've got 2 stations that are exactly identical. And you'll see them start to close off. So I'm going to add these conditions, and it's just going to be very simple. We're going to put this on manual. Fuel input until full. And we're going to go to fuel output until empty. We're going to add another one, or 10 seconds of inactivity. And let's just keep it to 5 now. Make sure you have this or, right? So that means it's going to go here, and if it can't load anymore, if it can't offload anymore, it's just going to come back after a few seconds, right? So full. This is the conditions you want: full cargo inventory to fill up, and fuel output, right? And there's 2 stations named fuel output. And they're both identical. So here's the map. So let's go ahead and get it started. It's already full on its count, and you'll see it. It's going to start to fill up. Now watch as this fills up, and see we start to consume fuel. As this fills up, you see it go red. That means the station is disabled and it's off the grid. It can no longer see this station, but it's still offloading all of its cargo. And there it goes. All right, so the total between the 2 is 340, 337. See, it's slowly consuming. So this station is now red and disabled. See a little light there? Now, it's going to go back to the station, fill up, And now it's going to skip this one because it can't see it. It's red. And it's going to go to the next one. All right? And it's going to offload all of its inventory. And in a minute, yep, this one surpasses 100. And so now it's got fuel. And I'm just going to ride in this one on the way back. So as soon as it offloads, it'll be done. And now it's going to go back. And it's probably going to sit there at the depot, fill up, and then do no path because there's no train. Now look, if I look at the station, there's no train for it to go to, or no station to go for it to go to because we've disabled it with that circuit. Now, as soon as the first station ends up consuming enough material, then this station will kick back on. Right? So you'll see this. So I'm hovering over here. You'll see 497 is slowly consuming down the fuel. This will happen over time. But at the moment, you have a full train ready to go, and the fuel station is disabled. There's no other fuel output. So now multiply this by 20 of these. The train will go fill up all your stations and then come to the depot and wait until one of these becomes active. So again, if we speed this up, eventually what will happen is, oh, here it comes, I think. All right, we've got... All right, as soon as this line is done, it'll get down to under 100, and this one will call it again. Logistics system storage. Where are the other ones? There's none in there. It's not 325. Oh, it's in over here. It's just wired to this chest. It's not wired up to the entire system. So as soon as this outputs and the fuel is consumed, and here we go. This will turn green when these two chests combined get below 100. There it is. It's turned green, and you can see the path. The train has already calculated a path over here, and it's going to fill them up again. There we go. And it'll fill these up, and it fills up a little bit of buffer in here as well. And now you've replenished. Now you've replenished your fuel depot, your fuel output. And that's one option. This is the most common option to making a fuel depot. Now this one should go green here in a minute. As soon as it does this one, there it goes, ding. It is now green and enabled, and now that train has found itself a path to deploy to. Now, fuel doesn't really consume this fast. So this will happen over maybe an hour or so once trains are refilled. But this is how to fuel up trains at outposts. Now, a lot of the number one use case is, well, I've got fuel in my main base, but I don't have fuel in my outposts. And what happens if I have a train going from outpost to outpost and it never goes to main base? Well, this is your use case. So watch this. This will fill up very quickly, and then it will sit here and it's trying to go to the next station, and it cannot find a path. And as soon as these open up, then it'll find a path. And this is the most common option to setting up a fuel depot. Okay, here's a second option. Instead of a dedicated fuel train dropping off fuel at every outpost, this is a consolidated fuel depot in between outposts, or a consolidated train depot that can fill up your trains in or out. So the downside for one of these is that since all of your trains are going to run through here, you'll need a really big stacker, a lot of area, and a lot of depot stations to accommodate all your trains. So as your base grows in trains, the bigger your fuel depot will need. The upside is that you don't have to have a dedicated train for it, and you can consolidate your fuel all in one spot. So there's advantages to disadvantages of both of them, and these are just two options. So here is, I've illustrated the supply side with 4 different trains. We have a green circuit train, steel, copper, and iron. And so each of these this is in creative mode, a little bit of these placebos here for matter generators, and they generate material and they put it in the train. So let's take a look at the fuel depot. Here is just a normal fuel producer. Say you have a big oil refinery and you're producing fuel, put it down the line so that it fills up. You line it up with the engines so that it'll put into the engines, and I just have one train name called Fuel Depot, and all of these are the same train station name. And then here's the output side for each of them. That outputs just into a void, and the material is destroyed, just to illustrate an input and output. And these are not necessarily located in the same spot. They could be located all over the map, but for illustrative purposes, I've just placed them all here. So let's take a look at the iron train, and normally its job is to go from input until it's full to output until it's empty. So that's just the back and forth. I'm just going to take material from over here and dump it over there. So its job is to go from here all the way over to here. But the other use case is, hey, your main base, maybe it's out of oil, out of fuel. And I've had to move my entire oil setup to a different spot, and that's where I'm going to set up my fuel depot. That's a very common use case. So there's no way, there's no fuel at the input and no fuel at the output, so I'm going to build a base in between and how to do it. So from input to output, there's no way to fuel up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one in here called Fuel Station, and I'm going to drag that up into the middle in between the two. So input, I'm going to fill up, and then in between, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say inactivity of 5 seconds, and that's really all it needs. So that means any the train is inactive for 5 seconds, it's going to move on. But when your inserters are putting fuel into it, this inactivity is not active. Let's go ahead and demo one of them, and we'll go ahead and start the iron input. So it's filled up its material. We're going to walk over here. It's going to find the nearest station, and then it's going to fill up on its fuel all the way. And now the inactivity timer will sit there and wait, make sure it's full, and then it's going to go out and find its way to its home to drop off its material. And that way, it ensures that your fuel is always full. You see, now it's just going to offload all of its material. Let's go ahead and start the other ones. So let's go ahead and add Fuel Depot in here, and we'll add just inactivity. And go ahead and Fuel Depot right here. Inactivity of 5 seconds. Go ahead and Fuel Depot inactivity. 5 seconds, and go. So now you see these trains are starting to get a little busy, and you need to have an option for input and output. And see, it's already using a couple stations, but the good news is it's filling up nicely. And look, oh, it's waiting. Oh, I missignaled. Oh, I missignaled. Hang on. Look at that missignal. There we go. There we are. Okay, all fixed. So now these are going to output. And now this is the first train that is going to go pick up some new material, and it's going to be full on fuel. So it's not going to have any activity. So its fuel is going to be max. So you'll see what a full train still has to do to get back over there. Oh, and I'm going to missignal this one if I'm not careful. They should not be waiting on the outside like that. There you go. So now this is a full train, but because we're going to leave this on autopilot, it's still going to go to its fuel depot and stop there, wait 5 seconds, and then it's going to move on. So that's the other downside of a setup like this, is that there's going to be a lot of traffic in between in this fuel station. So you need to build a very big stacker, and you need to watch the traffic going in and out of your fuel station. The other one is there's other advanced logic that you can have the train wait in the stacker. There you can put a stop in the stacker and wait until called, and that way its idle state is not sitting at one of the endpoints waiting, is that it's sitting in the stacker waiting to be called, and that takes a little bit more circuits and some logic. You can see that more in one of my buddies has one of those things down Masters called the Hafala's Train Network, and I'll put that in the description below. You can go Google that. That's a more advanced version of this, and you kind of need that as your trains get going, because you can tell already that the traffic going in and out of the fuel depot gets crazier the bigger your base is, right? The more trains you have. this is a way to illustrate a second option for the fuel depot. My personal preference is I've built mega bases and giga bases on this model up here, and it seems to work pretty well. The downside is when you're done with the outpost, you got to clean up some fuel. Not that big a deal, but this one you don't have the luxury, or you don't have the cleanup task of picking up all the fuel that you drop off there. Normally, if you use a high density fuel such as rocket fuel, which is very high density, it's got 100 megajoules in each one, which means a full train can carry 3 gigajoules worth of energy. That's plenty for a train. You don't have to have a high inventory at your outposts. I do prefer option 1, but I did want to show this as an option. This works pretty well with maybe some larger trains. If you can isolate and an isolated fuel depot where it's way off the map, you're going to have traffic going in and out of it, but it's not going to interfere with other stops around it. So anyway, advantages and disadvantages to both of them. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like this sort of thing, hit that like and subscribe up in the over on the right side here. Make sure you ring that bell so I can let you know whenever I post a new video. If you have a question about anything, you can leave a question in the comments, or you can come by twitch.tv/Clowntown about 5 or 6 days a week and catch me live, and we can talk about it. We also have new player night where we go over basic concepts like this in Factorio every Friday night, as well as we also review the FFF and the Reddit. This week in Reddit, just a weekly question thread out on r/Factorio. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.